I want to call the meeting to order at 7:05. Brian, are you recording? Oh yeah, I see you are. Thank you. So anyway, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda, folks? All right, seeing none. I'll remind you quickly of the board norms. Stick to the agenda, be respectful, stay on topic. We've been doing a really good job of it, but it's important to keep that in front of us till we return to our name tags where it's actually in front of us. Okay, members of the public, if you have something you'd like to contribute that's not on the agenda, now's your time to speak up. If you can raise your hand, I can see it. If not, just unmute yourself and say something. If it's on the agenda, wait, we'll get to you then. Looks like nothing. Okay. Everybody got a chance to look at the minutes of May 11th. I'd just like, if there's no corrections to those, we could have a motion to approve them. Ken, you gotta unmute yourself. There.
I'm still moving to move the minutes.
You're making the motion now that you're unmuted?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
And Al seconds it.
What?
Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, please say aye, and I have to do the roll call, so I'll just go in order that you appear on my screen. Lindsay. You got to unmute for that, Lindsay.
Drats. Aye.
All right, Dana.
Aye.
Trish.
Aye.
Leanne.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Mike, hello.
Aye.
Keegan.
Aye.
And Howie.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. The minutes are approved. Okay, on to the new business for the evening. The talking about the continuing with the future planning. Before we get started, I just want to preface this whole thing. For those of you who have not maybe been in one of these meetings or watched one of these meetings before, that, you know, this is a process that the board had wanted to go through for a long time. We've been working on this now for we started this process in May, so we've had a couple of meetings where we've talked about this. There's actually a timetable that we can share as a visual that shows the process. You know, we do have a process here, but there are no predetermined outcomes. At this point, we've been through tonight we see an 11th scenario for possible futures. At the last meeting, at the last future planning meeting, the board asked the administration for the budget committee meeting and subsequently tonight's meeting to narrow down the options a little bit. And then we worked on the new or augmented option. They worked on fleshing those out. We had asked them to get some data for us to discuss whether or not the SU was a driving factor of some of the current budget issues. We asked for more information on the Leland Gray physical plant after the engineering study had been done. And we also talked about soliciting some information from the broader community. And so there were some draft surveys committed, or there were some draft surveys prepared. There are also, that's really all the work that they did. The budget committee then saw that on May 26th, and those documents are part of the board packet for tonight's meeting. And you know, we've already been through it once, but we'll go through it together tonight and option 11. So that's about it. Al, you want to talk about the budget committee a little bit too? Or did I steal all your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you stole most of it, but just to
Sorry.
kind of follow on. Yeah. So just kind of a reminder of the purpose of the budget committee. Ever since the study unified board, we've been planning to do long-term planning about the future of education in the Valley. 2 years ago, the board asked the administration or tasked the administration with developing a plan right after our creation to show the board and community what a system could look like. At that time, the board gave the parameters that it should cost less than the penalty threshold and should approach the state average for equalized pupil costs. So that's kind of like the history of the background years ago. And now we've kind of brought it up again with the administration. That's how we got to this point where we've designed this long-term planning process, which should last us right into fall. It's just a really good chance for us to, as the budget committee, get into the nitty-gritty of all the details. Regular meetings can't be entirely wrapped around a budget or budgeting process. So it's nice to have that time to really dig in and, as you were saying, look at all of the different options that the WCSU has presented to us in great detail so far. Thanks.
Thanks, Al. Are there any questions about this as we go through it at all? I keep looking for hands. Okay. So there is, Al, do you have that visual for the with the circles on it for the planning calendar? He's muted. We can't hear him cursing me.
1 second.
Got it. Okay, so that's the schedule that we're working on. We started on May 11th. We had a meeting on May 26th. June 8th, now the board is going to see what the budget committee saw on the 26th. Then there will be another budget committee meeting. Tonight, after tonight's meeting, we will be tasking the administration with further inquiries, additional work that we want to see done as we move forward with this. And then the budget committee will see it on June 22nd, and the board will see it on July 13th. And those are dedicated meetings just to the future planning process. That continues through July and into August. And by the end of August, the hope is that we will have come to a decision about what makes the most sense for our students and our district going forward. If not, the schedule can flex a little bit, but that's the goal. That's why there are so many meetings, basically, 2 meetings a month, dedicated strictly to future planning. So at the May 26th meeting, we got the reports back from the administration on the various tasks that we had given them. You want to start with the option 11. There's a graphic there. Thanks, Al.
Basically, this option is kind of a combination of other options that the board was interested in seeing. And you'll see on the, oh, go ahead.
That's the old option 11 because it doesn't have the finance update from 6.2. Thanks, Trish.
Bill had put a link to, oh, there's, I was going to say he put a link to it in the
Yeah.
chat box.
That's the current option. Thank you, Al. I was going to say, while he's looking for it, Patty, you have something you want to ask?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what, like people who aren't on the board knew where to find all of these, the schedules and these documents that you have.
There's a link in the meeting chat to the folder that has all these documents in it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take it away, Bill.
I'm just going to link the newest one so that it's there as well.
Okay.
My apologies if I did not get that to everybody, but basically, this is a good one to show because the next document we're going to show you is going to be FY22 based on all the options and the pursued, not pursued. So we took the next step and went to FY22. So as you're seeing this, basically this is kind of a centralized location option that the board asked us to prepare. It's looking at running your pre-K through 2 at the Townsend Elementary location and running 3 through 12 at the Leland Gray site, and following through just like we've done with every single option. You get to see kind of the financial assumptions, the instruction assumptions, the building assumptions, and the special ed assumptions. And you know, I guess the 5 of us could answer any questions on it, but essentially what you're doing is you're taking the option that had pre-K through 2 at Townsend and 3 through 5 at Newbrook, and you're bringing the 3 through 5 at Newbrook into the Leland and Gray facility so that you have a centralized kind of campus-like feel of right in the center of town. So that's kind of the narrative idea of the thought.
Thanks. And some of the positives are we keep a teacher per grade. We can move educators from building to building. You know, we could actually use either one of the other schools, the buildings, the Jamaica School or the Newbrook School for special ed too. But those are all decisions that, you know, those are just sort of this is a high level look at what we could do with this. This one I think is actually in the estimated tax rate among the lowest. You know, I think in the next one, in the next pursued and not pursued, there's a tax rate. There should be the tax rate for everything, right?
Yes,
and that'll give us a good idea. But I believe this one comes in actually close to the low end of the tax rate for everything. Any questions on this specific option before we move along to the pursued and not pursued? Yes, Dana.
Bill, is there room for, in case we get an increase in population through the COVID thing, is there room with this option for the schools to be able to take on more students? Should we get 100 more kids?
The capacity at Townsend right now is about 150 students as currently constructed. If you did not build down and enclose classrooms in the bottom part of Townsend, which is a possibility, but as is, you can have 150 students. We built this on an average of 36 students per grade, so it's 144 in that Townsend building out of that 150. As Joe mentioned in the if you had Newbrook, that you brought the 3 through 5 to to Leland and Gray, you could have some possibility for augmentation where you might want to put all the pre-K in Newbrook, and then that would remove 36 students if you needed to respond to some population increases. But just for the sake of uniform comparison, we built it as, just a pre-K through 2 and 3 through 12.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thanks. Anything else regarding option 11?
Joe,
Yes.
I'm sorry I can't put my hand up, only on screen. Yeah, actually two things. One is when we were talking about moving, if we were to do all choice middle high school, that the students would have a harder time focusing on classes with a longer bus ride. Isn't that going to also be true with the younger kids? Now that they're all going to be in one central location, those who are way out in Jamaica and those who are all the way out in Williamsville?
Go ahead, Bill.
We didn't contemplate any of that, Ken. All we did was just build the option. I think you're asking an excellent question. That is the deeper level dive that I am hoping that the board gets to about the options you focus to really dive in deep about and pull some off the table and keep some on the table. But we didn't contemplate any of those situations. We just built the system based on what the board asked for.
Okay, and my second question is, so now you're saying that we're gonna have just 2 buildings in this option.
That is the way the option was built based on the request that was made, yes.
That's fine. With 2 empty buildings, it's coming. If the towns do not want to take back the building, well, number one, if the town does not want to close the school, that's your first issue. How are you gonna make a plan like this without having a vote to close the school? Because if you make all these plans, and I mean, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. If Jamaica says, no, we want our school to stay open, then you're going to have to keep, and Newbrook says, we want to keep our school open, and I don't know how that would work. That would either be a yes vote. It would have to be a double yes vote in both towns.
That's why we're having months and months of conversation about the options here. If obviously this is not an option if the voters of the district don't get on board with the fact that it does consolidate some buildings. But if we've had several months of conversation and the sentiment is that we don't want to consolidate buildings and we don't want to close schools, then there's no surprise in the $2.40 tax rate because that's what it costs to provide those services at all those buildings. If that's what, I mean, we had the first meeting and we started talking about the options where Leland and Gray closed, and there was a great deal of support from the community and since then to keep Leland and Gray. Leland and Gray means a lot to the community. Leland and Gray means a lot to our students. And we've pretty much stepped away from many of those scenarios that get rid of Leland and Gray because we lose something very important to our community by doing that. So that's one thing we've learned in this conversation. If we learn subsequently that we can't close those, that we have no tolerance for closing those schools, then obviously those options come off the table. But by taking those options off the table, the public has essentially agreed to pay for the options that they've chosen. And then when we present these budgets, we don't have the, there's no surprise in that the budgets are the budgets the way they are, because that's what you've asked us to run, and you can't run all of that on nothing, So that's why the conversation happens.
Well, Joe, when you say the public supports Leland and Gray staying at Leland and Gray, we're talking about what, 2 meetings that we've discussed it, and a total of what, 50 people out of how many voters?
in the people in attendance, it was pretty much unanimous sentiment to keep Leland and Gray. And I know I've heard a lot of stuff outside of the meeting, just as a board member, that Leland and Gray has a lot of value. And I think there was a lot of sentiment on the board itself that there was not a lot of, that there was no real evidence that getting rid of Leland and Gray somehow gave our children a better education or a better future. But we're still having the conversation. That could change at any moment. Are you, you know, we'll see who shows up. I mean, if all of a sudden we get 100 people on the Zoom call saying, you know, nope, close Leland and Gray, tuition my kids. I want them in Brattleboro. Then we'll have to look at that. But right now we haven't had that sentiment at all. So
you're not going to get 100 people on a Zoom meeting for this.
well, we'll continue the conversation as best we can and see what happens.
Many of the voters don't even have computers. Some of them don't even have our people don't even have internet. Believe it or not, there are still some out there. And if you don't have a kid in school, you probably don't have it. Unless you work from home, because a lot of our older voters don't have computers in their house. But guess what? Their vote counts just as much as the younger people's do.
Okay, so I have hands all over the place. I saw Mike's first.
Sure. This just you guys just touched on something, a sentiment I've heard expressed is that we should be publicizing these meetings. I know we've been publicizing them, but it seems like there may be potentially a disconnect between what this group's doing and like what the public perceives us as doing. So like the analogy was made, you know, we should publicize it like Act 46. You know, like if we're really having these conversations where we're talking about consolidating buildings or building new schools or whatever we're talking about, we need to get active community involvement.
Well, you know, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but you've just given me this segue, Mike.
Okay.
I agree with you. We've been posting this on Facebook. We've been posting it to Front Porch Forum. We've been doing as much as we've been, you know, doing as much as we can to get this out there. But what I'm thinking, and I mean, I don't need a directive, I don't think, from the board. But if there was sentiment to not have me do it, I'm thinking that what I want to do is write a letter after each one of these, you know, just sort of a press release. Here's what we talked about. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's where we're going. We'll send it out to the Commons. We'll send it out to the Reformer. We'll send it out to where, you know, all the media outlets, and we'll see if it gets picked up. And that'll get used by the people who don't have the internet and who like to read the paper. You know, but I agree. We need to get this out as far and wide as possible.
We definitely do.
And so, you know, that we had been talking about that and thinking about that. I got you, Ken, but you're down the list. There's people ahead.
That's fine. That's fine.
So, that's what I'm thinking, unless somebody thinks that's a bad idea. So anyway, then Keegan.
Thank you. I think that I'm just going to be echoing what Mike and what you, Joe, have just said. I think that this does really create an opportunity where we are able to connect with our community members. And we do recognize that not everyone who is part of the voting population has access to internet or chooses to engage in civic discourse electronically. So I do agree that the concept or the suggestion of creating like a summary of conversation and then sharing that in print form, I think that's a really great idea. But I think also getting back to what Ken had referred to before about like not really knowing, like 50 people showed up to a Zoom meeting to have a conversation around keeping Leland and Gray open. We know that our population, we know that our communities do not want to continue to see massive increases in their property tax rates. And we also know that there's a lot of sentiment and a lot of heart that goes into small community schools. but I think the hard conversations need to be had around what matters more to you. Do you care more about the option of keeping a unsustainable education model running locally, where your tax rates will naturally go up year after year after year? Or do you want to have that hard conversation and really think differently about what education can look like for our kids? Hard conversations are hard, but they're also the ones that we need to have. I think our kids deserve those deep level conversations around their educational futures. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Keegan. Patty, you were next.
Hi, thank you. I really would be concerned about you all taking anything off the table right now, because the word has not maybe gotten out about all the options. And also, it's such a crazy time right now that we don't even know what's going to happen 5 days from now, much less 2 months from now. And I think you'd be wise to keep all the options on the table, because the school choice might actually work out to be something based on whatever happens with that building too. Thank you.
Ken, you were next, and then Lindsay.
Okay. Well, Lindsay, if you want to go first, go ahead, because I already spoke.
I just wanted to just suggest that as everyone's talking about the trying to leave some options on the table, I mean, we potentially could leave an option on the table for future discussion and a little more in-depth look into a Leland and Gray option. I think even if the sentiment is among the board right now, the general sentiment seems to be that we would like to try and keep Leland and Gray. I think it's a little preemptive to completely remove it, and also to leave it on is a good reference point for future discussions, because it's going to continue to come up, and to have it on the list as this is what that means and this is what we're looking at every time we have that conversation, I think we're going to want to reference that.
Just to clarify, taking them off the table just means that we're not going to spend a lot more administrative resources on taking that deeper dive. For instance, Ken said, in option 11, now doesn't everybody have a longer bus ride, and what's that? And that is a question that we should look at in much more in depth. But, until we actually say these are the ones that we think look the best right now, and we want to go a lot deeper on them, we have to start taking things and not going as deeply on them, because we don't have the manpower to go deep diving on 11 options. So that's what off the table. I mean, they're not gone, and we've done some look at them, but we're not going to. What taking them off the table really means is more that we're not going to put serious resources into looking at them deeper at this time. Better? Okay. Ken.
Okay. A couple of things here. One is if you do wind up closing the two buildings, okay, this is just if you do, there's expenses in having a closed building in the district. We went through this before, way back during the WRED study, and it wasn't put into building a new school and everything else, which is you still have to, unless the town immediately takes them over, you still have to pay for maintenance, upkeep. There has to be a phone in the building. Electricity you still have an electric bill. You'll still have a heat bill.
All part of that deep dive that we would need to take if we pursued that option further.
Well, yep. And this is what I'm saying. Though you cannot put out, it'll possibly cost this much without having that in there, because you'd be surprised at the expense, especially if the building is in need of a lot of repair, and that repair, by letting it sit dormant, is going to get accelerated. Just throwing that out there. Number one.
At this point, all the numbers are calculated using the same assumptions. They're all high-level 10,000-foot numbers, and they would be narrow, they would be obviously fine-tuned as we pursued an option more aggressively. But that, you know, all of these numbers have a bunch of things that could affect them in there. So,
Okay, well, let's not be leading the public blindly. That's all I'm saying. And,
I
okay,
think I've just admitted that all the numbers are calculated on the same stuff. So there's absolute transparency there.
well, on the same stuff, that's narrows it right down, Joe. No. All right, seriously. Okay, let me get to, I would like to make a motion. Back on the topic we got trailed to, and that is I'd like to move for the board chair to write a letter to the local paper to keep the public up to date on possible future plannings of the school district.
Is there a second? Verbally, anybody?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, there were other hands up, but we got a motion on the floor now. So is there any discussion on the motion? Yes,
Joe?
Keegan.
In the language that you use in the letter to the public, I think just stressing that this is a civic engagement, and if people have opinions, they should show up to our Zoom meetings and do the best they can to participate. Because
I envision these press releases as, you know, absolutely an invitation to show up with information about what we have discussed and what we're planning to discuss, and soliciting input. You know, we'll have the Zoom link, you know, but yeah, that's the plan.
love it. I'm on board.
Okay. Anything else to do with the motion? Mike, I see your hand.
My hand was up from before.
Right. I'll come back to you after the motion.
All right.
I had seen you. Okay, so ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Lindsay,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Ken, Keegan,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Trish,
Aye.
Al,
Aye.
Leanne,
Aye.
Howie,
Aye.
Ken, coming back to you. Can you unmute?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, the motion carries. So I will be doing those press releases. Mike, your hand was next.
Right. And so it's kind of, we were talking about option 11, but then we were talking about taking things off the table potentially. This is more in regards to option 10, because when we look at these numbers, it looks a lot more expensive. So if we were in the mood to kind of narrow our options a little bit, I think option 10 would be the one we'd want to narrow. We don't know what's going to happen with our state education funding. We don't know what's going to happen with future requirements as far as student safety and maybe building renovations or HVAC system upgrades or all that. So I was just thinking that one is expensive and there's a lot of unknowns, and we might be wise to table that one until we have more information.
Gotcha. This is the first time that the whole board has seen that one. That was part of what was fleshed out for us at the last budget committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think that might be one that we don't pursue as aggressively as some of the other ones because, you know, simply because of the cost. But it was important to ask that question and see where we were, because
Worthy to ask.
now when somebody says, well, why didn't you build a new building? Well, because the tax rate went to 288. You know, and we can say that we looked at that from a fairly high level and investigated the costs of a bond and all of that, and we know, you know, we're making an informed decision.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay, so these
Bill's got his hand up.
Bill does. Oh, I can't see Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I thought it might be a good idea for Chris and Lori just to kind of run you through these options. Lori dominantly, Chris can hop in when it involves building and operations, but just because we took the next step on the group that you're seeing here, and you're seeing FY22, and for a new building, you're seeing FY23. So I think context is important. So I think it might be important for Lori just to kind of explain it, and then Chris to kind of hop in so that the board and the people that are listening in, as well as the recording, have the full context of what you guys are looking at under this document. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Lori, can you kind of go for
Sure,
it?
sure. So I went the next step and I just took, some really basic assumptions, which I've listed below there. So what does the current operation that is, 204 before any incentives, what does that compare to for next year? So I did, the increase in salary and benefits using a standard number that is, historical. We have typically seen an increase in special ed and an increase in transportation. There'll be an increase in food service. There will be a little bit of reduction in debt for next year as the Newbrook HVAC system is paid off. And then, depending on the plans, there's some FTE decreases, not in the number one in purple there. That is basically just taking fiscal year 21's budget and moving it up to fiscal year 22. And of course, there's no incentives. So, this is why you're doing this work, exactly why you're doing this work when you look at the tax rates, because this is what happens year after year. It's just built upon. And so the mid-range for that is $2.35. Then fiscal year 22, I didn't really do anything to this one except for apply those options. The tech heavy one, we haven't really spent a lot of time with that one. Didn't seem to really grab anybody's interest when we came out of the gate. Number 3, again, applied the same assumptions for that. So you can see where that one falls at the 229 mid. And then I looked at building a new building. And if we want to go there, and I can talk through that, and then Chris could jump in and talk about the actual building itself. I don't know, Al, if you wanted to go to that WRED LTP budget, you could probably click right on that link. Whoa, what was that? You're probably going to need to click on the link on that sheet.
I'm sorry, Lori, can you name the sheet again?
If you go back to the reviewed and pursued one.
Yep.
There was right there. There is a link that just shows the breakdown. I mean, I can talk about it high level, and then, you can look at it at a different time. But basically, it's talking about it's not letting you go there. Just go to, oh, shoot, it didn't go over. But basically, it's talking about the $40 million that you saw. I think that is on one of Chris's sheets there. We talked about as a budget committee. We had gotten some numbers on $40 million, what the bond would be per year, what the cost would be. So, I applied the same increases, only I applied them for 2 years because, obviously there would be no way to build a building in 1 year. You would have to go out at least 2 years. And and I'll let Chris talk more about this, but the $40 million building does not include land or, it could house all of the different pre-K through 12 students, but it would be a no frills. And so Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in and kind of talk about what we've found.
Sure. Yeah, as Lori said, it would, I mean, 40 million would probably get us a basic building to house our students. We just wanted to give a rough number just so we can get an estimate of what that annual cost would be with principal and interest, so we can try to build what our tax rate might look like. Obviously, if that option was going to be pursued further, as Lori said, we'd have to take into consideration land, what we're going to do with the current building, how we're going to make that transition, and obviously narrow down what we might want to offer into a new building, which could exponentially increase that cost from 40 million, you know, up to 50, 60, depending on what else we wanted to offer: programming, additional cafeterias, more gymnasium space, auditorium. You know, the list can go on, and that number can grow very quickly. So 40 million, again, we wanted to give a rough number of what a base building would cost. No frills, to house all our students if that option were to be pursued further.
And just to talk about, I think last time at the budget committee meeting, you know, we talked about that principal and interest is part of the exclusions of not paying a penalty. But when I actually ran the figures, it actually does not get rid of the penalty. It reduces the penalty, but because your cost of students is so much higher, it's proportional, I guess, is the answer. So the cost per student was somewhere in the $24,000 range without the penalty. So, you know, while in the end it reduced the penalty somewhat from what you're paying now, it did not remove the penalty. And we did talk about that in the budget committee. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Mike hit the nail on the head before, is that there's a lot of unknowns still as far as aid from construction for schools, which, you know, we got close to seeing again, and then with COVID-19, I'm sure that got pushed back a little bit. But we did want to get this on the table to explore a little bit further to this point of what that tax rate might look like, because we have the unknowns about our structural assessment for Leland and Gray once we get those figures back, and we'll talk a little bit more about that further tonight. But you know, so we can do a little bit of comparison on renovation versus rebuilding.
So Al, I don't know if you want to go back to the reviewed and pursued, and I can just quickly talk through the rest of them. I think there's only one more, option 11, right? No, does Al hear me? Can anybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay.
I can hear you, Laurie.
Thank you. Just checking.
Ken's raising his hand and Patty's raising her hand.
How about Joe? Did we lose Joe? Maybe we lost Joe. We lost Joe and Al.
Okay, where's the clerk? The clerk needs to take over the meeting.
I think we lost him.
Yeah, we lost 3 people. Went from 30 to 27.
We don't have a clerk, do we, Bill? We didn't reorganize. We're leaderless. I'm gonna take this opportunity to ask Lori a question, though.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see if they can get back on. Okay, now in the West River Valley now, there's a movement to try to go 100% renewable, right?
Yes.
You're aware of that.
I am aware of that.
So if this no frills school is built, which I'm not exactly sure what that term means. I'm sure it means no plush carpeting. We'll go with that. Would this new building be a 100% renewable? That's something we should in this valley. We should actually make sure that happens if we build a new building. That should be automatically in the cost. I don't know if it's solar shingles, solar roofing.
Right. I'm going to let Chris answer this for you. Ken, if that's okay?
That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. And if we did pursue that route, the cost might increase, but we also might see some more incentives. Efficiency Vermont particularly would be all over a project like that. Again, a lot of unknowns, but certainly up for discussion if we were to do a deeper dive into this conversation for this option.
Well, I would seriously make it I wouldn't make it an option. I would make it a prerequisite, just because that's the way Vermont is going to move. We're shooting for it. And if we're going to shoot for it, why would we build a new building and shovel coal, so to speak? Nobody wants to talk but me.
Well, Patty wants to talk.
Patty, talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Patty, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to remind people, or maybe everybody realizes, that the weighting factors report is still a thing. And that we won't know until that actually, goes through all the legislature and stuff, but that could make things possible that previously were not possible. But that's another variable that is an unknown. Thank you.
Mike, do you want to go next?
Sure, Keegan. While we're in this free fall mode without people keeping us on task, that tech heavy agenda, tech heavy option. I would kind of like to know a little bit more about that, because I'm assuming it's like what we're doing now, right, with a bunch of people on Zoom. And I'm quite sure that there's kids that this is really working for, and maybe those are some of the kids who were struggling before, and now this is working for them. We should investigate that a little bit more, I would say.
So, Mike, I'm gonna can I respond? I don't
Sure.
Normally we're getting called on, so this is a new zone for me. So, Mike, the question I have for you following up on that is, and it's also a little bit related to what Ken had mentioned earlier about how there's still a tech inequity going on within our different communities, and how some kids have internet, reliable, good, high-speed Wi-Fi at home, and some kids either have dial-up or nothing at all. So I think that to be tech heavy, you need to think about tech equity too. And what does that look like? And is it on the parents of students to find ways to fund their own internet use at home? Or is that a school decision where we're going to be taking on the cost of putting in boosters in common areas within towns to make that happen? So there's a lot of conversation, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, that we can kind of grow from this crisis response.
Sure,
those
are
learning that's like really well thought out and well planned for.
right. Those are great points, Keegan. And we've seen, like, I know Velco ran fiber optic through a lot of our towns, and then we just did the whole broadband study for Windham County, right? So we're moving in that right direction anyway. I'm just saying it would be a shame. There are kids who this is really working for. And if it's a possible option that saves us taxpayer expense, I mean, maybe it's the difference between having to have an extra teacher or para in a classroom because, 5 kids decided they wanted to do it online or something like that. I think it's at least worthy of investigation, especially if we're looking at all these other options.
I'd love to hear Bob's hand raised comment.
Yeah, I guess first I would say, Mike, you're right. There are a lot of kids for whom this is working really well. However, I would give you the statistic that on a daily basis, we have less than 2/3 engagement of our student body with this method. Now,
really?
Granted, yep. Now, I grant you that's at a secondary level where they're using their parents less and less for support, obviously. And it was all started with pretty minimal training of staff on how to be most effective at it.
Right. I think a trial by fire.
Sure. But I would say that one thing about public schools we have to be careful about is that they have to be something that serves every student.
Right.
Less than 2/3. So I mean, it's worth a conversation, but I would say that what this has shown me, COVID has shown me, is that as an option, as a viable option on its own. It will meet the needs of some kids, but it will not meet the needs of all kids.
Okay, that's fair enough. I wonder, I would think that the engagement was higher at the elementary school level.
I think that it is probably.
Thanks, Bob.
I just wanted to say, my daughter, I mean, she was pretty good with this tech level learning, but it didn't really, I mean, the curriculum was, you know, she was going off math on a teacher's video. It's not, there wasn't really good curriculum situated for the kids, specifically lessons plan. I mean, the teachers did an excellent job in trying to get something developed for them to have the remainder of school. And there would be a lot of work in coordinating a curriculum at that level for tech learning.
That's a good point too, Dana.
I think you can also, like, don't forget about like the whole social emotional connections that teachers naturally develop those relationships with their students too.
They're not always positive ones though.
So
Yes,
Bill
they
is sending
are,
a
though.
message to us all that we're going to be moving the meeting.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
How?
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna move to Google. I put it in the chat so anybody who's on can cut and paste that into a browser. I've sent it directly to all West River people, okay? And I heard from Al, they have lost their power. So Al and Joe are out. I'll open the meeting and I will put up the agenda and we'll rock and roll. Okay. Is that cool with everybody?
Sounds good, Bill.
Bill, the Google link isn't there.
No, yeah, no link.
Oh, sorry.
I see it at 7:43. Oh no, that's the reviewed and pursued. Yeah, never
About
mind.
that. You guys see it now?
I do. Thank you.
Meet.google.com and a bunch of stuff.
All right, Bill.
Gotcha.
Ken?
Bill, I'm gonna make
Ken?
I would like to make a motion that we recess to move to Google.
Okay,
Second.
Ken made a motion. Mike, you seconded. Okay, let's hear it. Ready? Ken,
Aye.
Keegan,
Aye.
Jilly, Leanne,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Howie,
Aye.
Lindsay,
Aye.
Dana,
Aye.
Trish.
Aye.
Who'd I miss? Looks like we got Al back. Al?
Yeah, Bill, we need to make it back on. What am I voting on?
We're going to move to Google and you're going to run the show. So get excited. Unless you can run
I
the
had to
Zoom
run
one
to
from where you are
coverage.
now. Oh, wait. Joe's back.
I'm on my
Yeah.
stuff phone.
Wait, that's Will Cleaver.
Yeah, that's our chief technical officer who actually has his name on the Zoom account.
We don't have to go anywhere. Joe can keep running it.
I had to go home. There's no power at my office. So I had to go
No.
home, but now I have power.
All right. So Ken, will you withdraw your motion?
He left already.
What did you move to adjourn and leave?
Just a
Yeah.
recess. Just a recess. All right.
Okay.
You're
so-
back in charge, Joe.
What?
You're back in charge.
Okay, so catch me up. Did we get through?
Can I do one interruption? It looks like a whole page of people are gone, just FYI.
I'll go on that site and tell them to go back.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I don't know who's affected by the power loss. I mean, Grace Cottage is all out there. Generators are all running. I was sort of shocked when I walked home and there was internet here and power here when there isn't at my office.
Yeah, work's telling me to come back to work, probably.
So Mike, what do you think about that tech heavy option about right now?
I still think that, you know, we will have learned some things from it. And if we develop the kick butt curriculum for doing it tech heavy, then we can license it out to all the other districts and solve our financial problems.
I don't think anything we develop as an education district is then licensable. I think it's like, you know, work for hire. It's a nice idea. I like where you're going with that. You should get an eye patch. You
Okay,
pirate, you.
Go back. Go back.
Go back where?
Bill's trying to tell the people to come back.
All right, I left that. I'm back to you guys. I was doing two at once. They're coming back.
Okay.
We should add sign language to the curriculum. First for the board members.
I took some in college. I don't remember much.
I was gonna say, Joe, I don't think that one sign is appropriate.
No,
right?
no, no, not that. I know a few words and I know finger spelling pretty well, but that's about all I could do. I certainly wouldn't claim to be proficient.
All right, you got Ken, you got Keegan, you got Molly Wilson,
Oh, Bill, you became the host.
and Bob. How?
I don't know. But you are the host. So there are people in the waiting room and you can let them in as the host. You can also make me the host again.
Yeah, I want to do that. How do I do that?
Right click on your name. There will be a bunch of, it'll say like more, and then you should have a drop down menu that says, you know, make somebody the host.
Oh my God.
Because I just got a text from Al that said, let me in. I'm like, I can't, I'm not the host.
This is not good. You're gonna have to walk me through this. All right, I've admitted Ken, he's there. Oh, more, okay.
Yeah, more.
It
There
just
should be
says
an option.
rename.
That's all it says.
Yeah,
But you were letting people in.
I click on, this is awesome.
Hold on, I got it.
Thank God.
Okay.
See, this is why flexibility in education is like so meant to be together. I'm so proud.
Okay. I'm the host again.
You are.
I'm home. We got it. Sweet.
Do we need to make a motion to reconvene?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, Ken.
I'll make a
I make a
motion.
I make a motion to reconvene.
All right. Is there a second?
Keegan seconds.
Sweet. It's been moved and seconded to reconvene. Did we actually vote to unconvene?
Just
Yes.
a recess.
Okay. Did we have a vote?
We did.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we got to do the roll call. Lindsay,
Aye.
Dana,
Yes.
Trish,
Aye.
Leanne,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Al. Oh, Al.
Did you let Al in?
He's in. Keegan.
Aye.
Okay. Howie.
Aye.
And that's all the board members, right? Al, we can't hear you, but we got enough to pass the motion. We are back in session. Where did we leave off?
Well, we covered half the agenda while you were gone, Joe.
Joe was gonna write one check to solve our budget problems.
If we could call
Oh,
up reviewed and
sweet.
pursued again and finish that. Any questions for Lori? That's where we are on the agenda.
Okay,
Reviewed
thank
and
you, Bill.
pursued.
So, anything for Lori while we went through reviewed and pursued? Did Chris get a chance to weigh in on his pieces of that, or do we need to hear from Chris now? Okay, great. Dana, you have a question?
Yeah. I got a text from my mom. She wanted to know what the non-resident tax rate was for this next coming year.
Oh. Great question, Dana. I don't have that off the top of my head. It did go up. I was thinking $1.58, but I would have to look it up. I'm
You
sure
can
it's on.
email that to me. I'd appreciate it, and then I'll send it to my mother.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Why am I on a beach?
It's a new update that
You
Zoom
have a
has
background
implemented.
set.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't think I did. I will get rid of that. Sorry.
Mike, what's that you were saying about the high-tech option?
Okay, prove me wrong.
Very entertaining, if nothing else. Very entertaining.
Every test is multiple choice.
There, I'm off the beach now. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so we've gotten through reviewed and pursued. So now we're on to the SU as a driving factor.
Not yet. We still
Not
need to
yet?
go back to reviewed and pursued to see the FY22 impacts on option 11 that came after the FY23 look at the new building.
Got you. Al, are you in a position to share your screen? I know you're on cellular at this point. I think we may have lost Al.
Joe, you can give me whatever superpowers and I'll share mine.
I was gonna say, do you want me to try to share mine?
Oh, Lori's better than me by
Well,
far.
I don't know if I can. I'm just,
I can.
okay.
So that means, Trish, make sure you're on the lookout for people
Sure.
that want to talk.
Okay, so the option 11, which is pre-K, it says K, but it's pre-K through 2 at Townsend, 3 through 12 at Leland and Gray, is just taking, again, a high-level look. And I, did the same thing. I increased all of these and did the decreases. Obviously, there would be less in grants as far as the small schools grant is concerned. I believe I took all of the small schools grant out because Townsend would have 144 students, so probably wouldn't qualify for one at that point. And so that's where that leaves that one. And I think the question came up before about space. Maybe Dana brought that up and Bill addressed that as well. So there could be other uses for the buildings, outside placements, having a special ed program, that type of thing. None of that was put into these different options. So it would obviously add some more cost if we kept a building open. Is there any other questions about option 11?
Yes, Lori, I have a question. Sorry.
Okay.
So this is with Newbrook being closed, correct?
Yes, and Jamaica.
Okay. Well,
That's
does that mean that that means that the solar field money?
So none of that has been looked at. I did leave that lease money in because the lease goes to West River. So.
No. But if you get rid of the property, you get rid of the lease, it goes back to the taxpayers a new thing.
So none of that is part of these options.
Well,
again, part of the deeper dive we might have to take.
Correct. And legally, if you don't own the property, you don't own the contracts on it.
Thank you, Ken, and congratulations on your graduation from law school.
Hey, you're very welcome. I've spent enough time with an attorney over this situation. Thank you, Joe.
Keegan, you had a question?
I did. Whoever is controlling the screen, I found that sheet 2 kind of cuts right down to the mustard of the actual tax cost for each one. So I think in the most simplest of terms, am I correct to interpret this information to mean option 0 carries with it the same tax cost that option 11 would.
So I'm seeing a different document here.
That was sheet 2. This is sheet 2, Lori, of the reviewed and pursued options. I think it's the unified tax rate, maybe?
Can you
It's
go
just
back to sheet 1?
Okay. Well, hang on. Oops.
Okay. So Keegan, to answer your question, fiscal year 21 is the budget that's, going before the voters on Wednesday, right? And so I basically took that budget and moved everything to 22 and applied these assumptions.
Right. But I'm just clarifying that the option 0 with a tax rate of $2.04 would be the same as option 11 that would centralize or at least create the essence of a common campus for a K2 and 312 in Townsend.
No, option 0 is what is the budget for fiscal year 21 right now.
So should I not be looking at sheet 2 of this document then?
Probably not.
Thank
I think she's looking at option 1 would be basically the current structure next year.
Well, if you look at sheet 2, that's what I'm reading, but I'll start looking at sheet 2.
Column J on sheet 1 gives you the comparison from 1, 2, 3, 10, and 11.
Thank you.
Knowing that number 10 is FY23, 1, 2, 3, and 11 are FY22.
I had started to do something else on sheet 2 and then decided to put it all here. So sorry, I'll delete sheet 2. Just look at sheet 1.
Hey, Lori.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry if I can go. These assumptions, I know our district is facing a potential big liability in healthcare next year. Is that included in these?
No.
Okay, I saw the increased salary and benefits. That's why I asked.
It's just the basic, so every year
There's an increase.
their healthcare premiums increase. So I use that, percentage, but what you're talking about is when the statewide healthcare goes into effect, the potential liability that we might have is not figured into this.
Right. And that was significant, right? That was like about $500,000 or more.
It was. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you.
But it would affect all the budgets.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any more questions for Lori? Bill?
Because this is the one document that has everything on there, not committing to any timelines, but, and I hate suggesting it because Lori will kick me under the virtual table, but are there any options that are under the reviewed section that the board would like to see move to an FY22 with assumptions? Because those are under the reviewed but not pursued, those are all FY21. And under the top half of your document, you're looking at FY22, except for the building, which is FY23. And so Ken's point, Howie's point, Patty's point, Lindsay's point about something on the table or off the table, would it benefit the board? Would it benefit the community at some later date, and I'm not committing to when that date is, that those 4 through 9 get updated, or a select group of that 4 through 9 get updated to an FY22, where we put those same assumptions that you see on the top half of the page?
Hands all over the place. The answer is probably. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, let's kind of maybe like option 8. Move that up. just in case?
Well, not necessarily move them up, but to actually go through all those options and plug in the more current numbers.
Yes, that's what I meant. Thanks, Joe.
Mike, you were next.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I think that's wise. More information is always better. As we're even at 10,000 foot level, we might as well apply the assumptions and see where they turn out.
Sorry, Lori.
I want to emphasize, there's no commitment on when that's going to happen.
I only hear option 8 on the table right now, so that's
Oh, I like that. Good clarification.
I think we should look at all those four
probably-
options again.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to try and put the same numbers so that we're really looking at apples to apples when we're pulling things off and saying this is not worth doing. To use the same data makes sense. You know, I don't think we have to go any deeper than we have yet to those, but we probably should use the current, you know, use the most recent data, use the assumptions you made for the pursued options, but not with any timetable yet. Your own timetable.
just need to get through the end of the year.
Yes, that's fine.
It'll be that July 13th meeting at the earliest.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Keegan, you have a question.
I do. Being mindful that we've already reviewed the first 8 options and we decided a couple of meetings ago to let a few of them go by the wayside based on the community response to the discussions. And also being mindful of the amount of time and effort and work that's going to be required to flesh all of these out. Again, are there any that we can agree that are just like not an option? Or do you really want to have all 11 choices, all 11 options thoroughly fleshed out for consideration, knowing that we're only going to end up picking one? I'm only asking because we've had this conversation already. We narrowed down 4 through 8, and now we're adding them all back in. I think, you know, forward progression is a smart way to go. But I'm one voice on this board, so.
No, I understand what you're saying, but we're not really fleshing these options out so much as the numbers the numbers about the costs and the tax rates in the options that we've pursued use different data than the options that we did not pursue. So
I see.
We're not comparing apples to apples necessarily. So, you know, we're not going to look any more deeply. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to use the same assumptions for the cost analysis.
Thank you.
Lindsay, you had your hand up, I think.
I take it back.
Okay. Anything else on the reviewed and pursued? You guys have your task and you've all muted yourselves so you can curse us. So we're on to the SU as the driving factor of the budget. Bill, do you want to speak to that, or, you know, let Stephanie and Jen do it, or?
No. I'll open it, and then who's sharing? Is it Lori, Miss Lori?
I have been sharing. Hang
You
on.
have been sharing. Okay, if you could pop it up.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I'll open, and then I'll ask Jen and Steph to hop in.
This is the sheet that's super and special ed 4-year comparison.
Yes. So at the May 11th meeting, I think Mike brought up that there is a perception in the community that the SU is the driving force for the budget challenges that West River faces.
I did.
And I think is a very important question. And so we wanted to be transparent and provide that information. And so to the budget committee, we provided this document. And then the budget committee asked us to flesh out the FTEs that fall below the budgetary costs. And then also to fill out some more detail on the special ed costs, looking at the child count. So I'll explain kind of the top one, and then I'll let Stephanie explain the bottom one. And then both Jen McCusick, our Director of Curriculum, and Stephanie Beatty-Hancock, our Director of Special Education, have created some documents that are independent of this that we can look at after this, that kind of talk about the actions that the SU is taking in order to provide high quality service and in a cost-effective manner. But basically, if you look at that top part of the spreadsheet, you'll see the last 4 years of the SU central office and the costs year over year and the costs for the last 4 years. So for the last 4 years, the central office has increased 5.92% and has increased 0.75 in FTEs. You can see that in FY20, there was an increase of the Director of Operations, as well as taking on the financials for Marlboro, Dover, and Stratton. And so that added to the capacity that we needed to deliver those services. And then you can see in the line 8, you can see specific to West River, where the costs for West River in the assessment from the central office has gone up and gone down, but over the 4 years, it has actually decreased 3%. So it's an overall increase of 6%, and West River has seen a decrease of 3% during those 4 years. So that's kind of that top half, explaining the central office. And then we realized that when people talk about the SU, they don't just talk about the central office, they talk about all the people employed by the central office. So those two dominant paths are special education and the agency fund. And the agency fund is basically a wash in the sense that it's what the boards want, and it just, they're hired by the SU, and it's kind of an in and an out. So you want a service of PE, and you only serve Townsend for 0.4, but it's 0.6 at Dover. Well, then that is a 1.0 WCSU employee, but only 0.4 is charged to West River because that's what has been asked for in the level of service, but you got to have a full-time employee, and 0.6 is charged to River Valley. So we focused on the central office employees, so that's me and the building on Route 30, and the staff there that is paid for by local funds. And then below is the special education. So I'll pause right there, and if anybody has any questions about the top half, I'm happy to answer. And then I'll pass it off to Stephanie to kind of talk about the special education.
Looking for hands. No? Okay.
One thing about Zoom is we're very much getting better at wait time. So it's a good instructional practice for all of us. I appreciate that. All right, Stephanie, if you want to hop on and just kind of explain the net special education spending and what that looks like, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. And I just want to say my internet has been horrible tonight. I got kicked off at least once, I think twice actually. So if anything cuts out, I'm sorry, and I will try to get back in. You can always email me questions if this doesn't work. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah. Okay. My head, everything's like very slow on mine. So you can see, I'm looking at this screen. I'm not ignoring you guys, but if you look at the child count, that is taken every December. We check how many students are in special education at that point in time. So it's literally just a snapshot. And you can see each year that there were pretty much increases year over year, which is pretty standard in special education. However, what's not being shown in this narrative is that we this year had 37 students exit. And part of that is kids moving out of district. Part of it is kids not needing special education anymore because of the great work that our teachers, our staff, our academic support team, and special educators have been doing, and special ed team. So what you're not able to see within this snapshot is what the story behind the scenes is that students are coming in and out at any given time. So you can imagine this number used to be 37 more this past year than it is right now. So just want to put that out there. So if you look year over year, the increase in special education primarily is because of students needing out of district placements and transportation. We still keep like 1 to 18 ratio of a special educator to students on IEPs, and our our central office related service providers has been pretty consistent over the last few years. So I feel that that team is less, I don't know, it's less fluid than it used to be. I feel like it's pretty static on who we have and what we need. I feel like it's the solid team. And then your outliers are, if we have an influx of students in any one location, we may need to hire a special educator, because if you have, a 1 to 18 ratio and all of a sudden 5 kids move in, that tips that person over the edge of not being able to provide the service for kids. So you need to bring somebody in. At that point, you have decisions to make on what kinds of services students need. Is it social, emotional, behavioral support? Is it academic? And you have to kind of factor that in when you're doing new hiring. So there is that piece. We are also working on implementing the recommendations for district management group for the big study that was done on special ed in our whole supervisory union. So we are working on making sure that we have diagnostic and prescriptive intervention. We are trying very hard not to have an over-reliance of paraeducators providing our instruction for students, and really having specialists do the instruction. And working very closely with the academic support team and teachers to ensure we're meeting the needs of all of our learners and catching them early. So that's kind of the overarching narrative. And now at this point, we're working very hard on trying to figure out ways to do regional collaboration and reduce the numbers of kids who are in out-of-district placements, help bring them back in our supervisory union, but doing it thoughtfully for the student, but also thoughtfully for taxpayers. And that's why, Joe, you don't need to worry, or Ken, sorry, you don't need to worry too much about us not using Newbrook, because I feel like it is a central location that might be appealing to other regional special ed directors and supervisory unions. So that's kind of the broad overstrokes. And you can also see the transportation increases. I know a few years ago or 2 years ago, we ended up having to go with a transportation company to provide transportation for kids on IEPs for the out-of-district placements. And that did increase costs quite a bit, but we are looking into other ways to meet students' needs. So that's kind of the overview. Any questions?
Do you need that other document at any point?
Which one?
The typewritten one.
The one pager?
The one pager. Yes, the one pager.
I have that. I don't know. I'm sorry that I lose track of who got what information when, and if it was a subcommittee or the board.
Everyone has that document now.
Okay.
As part of tonight's board.
So it was a one pager that had the table at the top of the child count numbers over time. And then the work that we're doing for alignment with district management group and again, the outline of the therapeutic placement. So. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, Steph, it's Dana.
Hi, Dana.
Hey, are we going to see more of children going through this with the COVID? Or, are we going to see?
Yeah. Given the last 2 weeks, 5 kids on IEPs are moving into our SU, which is fine. I think we're going to see numbers with general education students as well, but I definitely am starting to see the trend. They're coming from all over the country moving in. So yeah, I would anticipate quite a few more. I don't think it's going to be like over the top and, overrun with just kids on IEPs, but I was surprised. Just 3 today.
Any other questions? I'm looking for hands here. Okay. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
My pleasure, guys.
There is a curriculum development piece of this too. Do we want to add that? Bill, you're muted, man.
If you just want to put it up, Joe, and Jen can answer any questions if anybody has any. Jen, if you want to give a high level 60-second update, there are probably some new people on the call who have not seen it, but I don't think you have to go in any great depth because everybody has a copy.
Sure. Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, having some tech issues. Like, it seems like that's the theme tonight.
That's
So
tonight's
Bill just
theme,
asked
yeah.
me to put together kind of a quick overview. Stephanie did a great job talking about how special ed, reducing needs for special ed, and the collaboration between what has really become our general education or academic support team working with special ed to reduce the need for more services. So I think you can all see the quick bullet points that I put together, but there's a bigger picture here about the efforts that have been made in the last 3+ years as an SU, starting with the support from the boards to move to more professional development days for our staff. So our staff has really worked together to have that high level, research-based, evidence-driven curriculum and instruction through professional development. And then as a district, we've worked together to create teams, be them departments or grade levels or professional learning communities, to keep that work alive and have it not just be this kind of one-hit experience for teachers to get new PD. So, and it's been tied together. We've been focused mostly on math and literacy. And from that, we have developed our academic support team. So this is our first year of having a SU-wide or SU-focused academic support team driven by the LCAS to provide intervention for students who are struggling. It is based on our LCAS, which is seems to be, I think there's been 3 updates this year. We keep creating that document, looking more at assessment, how that data drives our instruction, and that document itself is guiding our work, but also how we do tiered instruction, and is expanding to include middle school and hopefully into high school as well, to really catch kids and identify the needs that they have and then provide them the appropriate services. So just a quick overview of the team of 6, which is a 5.6 FTE. We have 2 reading specialists, and the other 4 focus on math and literacy instruction for elementary. This year we did do some work with middle school. We want to expand that next year. The intervention that's provided is based much on the work that Stephanie cited in the GMG report and our integrated field reviews, and also just the best research that we can find out there. It's delivered by the experts, it's research-based, it's ongoing, and then that team works very closely together to continue their own professional development and to help coach the teachers in general education. So I think as a team, it's not just these 5.6, it's all the teachers that are working together on this, but they're really helping spearhead those things. And then the long-term goal being, if we catch them sooner and fill in these gaps that kids have, we won't have a need for so much special ed services. So lastly, I'll just say that it's been a great collaboration. We've been able to share training with special ed, and with our academic support team, we've been able to offer training for individual teachers and then do that through a coaching model as well. So if that's my quick overview. I try to be brief. Any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Anybody have a question?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Can I offer that?
Sure.
I just want to give a massive, massive shout out of gratitude to the special education division within this SU. The effort and time and determination that you guys have demonstrated to pull the kids of all needs back into the fold and to provide them the ultimate opportunities for support with compassion and dignity is just really, really amazing. And I truly appreciate the work that you guys are doing to move your process forward. So
Thank you very much. And I also want to note that one of the great things is we're still in a reimbursement model. So we're trying to implement these recommendations of DMG while it's in that mode where we can try it out and not have as hard of an impact. And then we'll see what the data shows us on how we should, proceed longer term. I also just want to add that in going through the process of hiring new staff and working on securing new staff for this upcoming year, it has been amazing, the interview processes and conversations. We have attracted some amazing people, and to be able to answer that we have a very strong mentoring program, we have amazing PD. We have a great system of, multi-tiered system of support. It's very, very attractive to employees. So I just want to say that has been amazing. And I think that our students will continue to see that. And that's not to say that we don't already have great staff. We totally do, but it has been a very different conversation in our interview processes. So thank you guys for your support too.
All right. Anything else? Comments, questions? All right. Thank you. While my power was gone, did we cover the Leland and Gray as part of the Lori conversation with Chris, or is that still make sense to go there next with the building update on Leland and Gray and the possible construction costs?
Mike, I think you have a pretty good handle on this. Did you feel like we talked about what we were talking about, or were we so focused on just the new building that maybe
I kind of think we were more focused on the new building. And I mean, Chris was talking, but that was right when we figured out we had lost people.
So you want to see the
if
renovation?
we could just pop
cost?
Chris in, I think that would be good. Yeah.
And you want to see the renovation cost spreadsheet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Chris, if you want to talk about renovation rather than new construction, that'd be great.
Sure. So this was just a list that was just compiled of some of the engineering studies that we've had. So our deferred maintenance from our capital needs assessment for Leland and Gray is about $1 million. I'll skip over the site assessment one for now. There was also an engineering study done on the well and the water system at Leland and Gray. One of the items in question that the state of Vermont is looking for an answer on is the replacement of the 2 water storage tanks. One is a storage tank, the second is an atmospheric pressure tank. They were both installed in 1970 and they are beyond their useful life at this point. So to replace those, we're looking at about $120,000. The cost for the parts and equipment, the labor, engineering fees, permitting fees, and they're also asbestos wrapped, so we have a lot of abatement costs, which is going to eat up a lot of that money. That building also does not have any whole building backup generator. The generator that's there just does some of the emergency lighting and the technology server equipment. So a whole building generator would run us about $100,000. And then going back to the site assessment, that's the structural engineering assessment that's going on now. The engineers were out last week to do their further analysis, their phase 2 part of that study. We don't have any accurate costs or anything yet. They're doing their report now based on what they saw. I'm just putting a rough number on that at $2 million right now. So that'll bring us to about 3.2 million. And then just some other considerations to think about for that building, which aren't going to be included of either of these reports, is old electrical and plumbing. The plumbing, some of that we're running into with the Act 66 repairs that we're doing into the building. And the electrical component is something to look at for the future as we, introduce new technology into the building or add more students or spaces. A lot of the panels are going to start getting overloaded, so we're going to have to look at some upgrades with that. Other considerations, interior rooms around the center that have no natural light, no outdoor air from exterior windows or an exterior point of egress. And then if we wanted to do any renovations that added any square footage to the building, we would also need to add a fire suppression system, as there is currently not one.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris on that? Yes, Dana.
I was just wondering, is there any chance we could get some USDA grants on some of this stuff? If we could look into the possibility of that at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. There are grants opportunities out there. We also started exploring one for the backup generator from FEMA. So there's money out there to be had. I think right now it might be a little bit harder with what's going on, but I mean, there are other opportunities with, in light of COVID for, HVAC. So it's just going to be a revolving door. But yes, short answer is there is funding.
Ken's raising his hand.
Thanks, guys. Actually, Howie's got his hand up too. So Howie, go ahead.
Yeah, when can we expect that accurate figure? Because that $2 million site assessment structural is just like out of your hat. I don't understand where that comes from.
Sure, yeah. We don't have a time frame of when we can expect that yet. It might be a few weeks for them to finish the analysis. They might want to come back and do some further testing. But from the preliminary report, there were a lot of building columns throughout that building that have deteriorated at this point from the inside out. All the metal I-beams that were used in that building are all concrete filled, and they are starting to rot out from the inside. And a lot of them have been covered at this point because they're pretty unsightly with rotting metal. So it might take a significant amount of money to really shore up that building to extend that useful life.
Yeah, no question about it. So you're saying are we looking at a couple of months before we get a number from the structural engineer?
I'm hoping it's more like a couple weeks, but I do not have an answer on that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we can really, move on anything until we get that report.
Ken, you're next.
Yeah, I just want to point out to Chris about the generator only does certain things there, the water system and a few lights. Is that right?
The generator doesn't even do the water system. So when we lose power, we do lose water for the school and for the town office. It just does some lights and mainly for the internet, because that's the servers for the internet for the district.
Okay. All right. No, and I'm all for, I brought this up a long time ago about the generators. FEMA, I don't know if it's the same one that I was looking after. I'll have to go back through years of notes if I still have them. There is, through the state, it was, I can't remember the exact department, but it was, they put out a grant every year, and it's kind of like a first come, first serve for projects like the generators specifically. So yeah, keep your eyes open for that. Thank you.
Sure.
And while you're at it, see if we can get some for the other buildings.
Okay, anybody else? Questions, comments? Okay.
Joe, I'm sorry I raised my hand.
Oh, hey.
At least I tried to. I'm having technical difficulty in front of your house.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um,
Just throw a rock at my window. I'm right here.
It's funny, you have to drive into town to get onto a meeting. Anyway, so just a question for Chris regarding all of these costs. So
kind of back to the new construction analysis. Was the new construction analysis, Joe, you mentioned last meeting or the meeting before that, what would it be if we just knocked down Leland and Gray? And it almost seems at this point, all the laundry list items that Chris has mentioned, that should be a strong consideration. So I don't know if that was included in the new construction about knocking down on site and rebuilding or something to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that to definitely take into consideration, is how he pointed out, as we get that real figure from the engineers, that'll drive this conversation one way or another.
But did the new construction analysis just account for strictly a brand new building on a separate location, or same on site, or didn't matter?
It didn't matter. We just looked at a $40 million bare bones building. It didn't take into consideration any purchase of land, any deconstruction of a current building as far as site goes, just building itself.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Looking for more hands. Nope. All right. So the next, then we also, we had asked for some surveys. And so we have some drafts of survey questions that I can pop up here.
Joe, could I just tee this up a little bit?
Please do while I find the document.
Okay, so Joe's going to pull up a draft document that Stephanie made about a survey. And then when we showed that to the budget committee, there was some discussion right at the end of our meeting. One about doing a survey similar to what you're looking at now for elementary schools, and one doing a survey about community priorities. And we did not create those last two surveys because we weren't clear on exactly what was the purpose and what is the information the board was looking for. So we're going to show you this draft survey, and Stephanie can answer any questions about it. And then I believe Dana brought up the point about the elementary survey. So we'll probably ask Dana to talk a little bit about that, and then ask the board to find out what is the purpose of that survey. And then if you want us to create a draft on that. And then the other one, I believe Keegan brought up, which was a community survey about priorities. So we would like to hear from the board about that so we understand that purpose. And Jen is running point on the community survey, and Stephanie's running point on both this survey you see in front of you and the possibility of an elementary survey. So thank you, Joe.
Oh, thank you. So this is it Jen or Stephanie that's running point on this survey?
This is the one that I created as a draft, so I can walk through this one if you want, or just kind of, okay, that sounds good. I got the thumbs up from Bill. So this was not a one pager. It has 14 questions on it, but not all of them would end up being on the survey. So my I don't know how to make this happen, but what I wanted was to make it so that when the person goes to take the survey, you select what your stakeholder aspect is, what kind of participant you are, and then specific questions come for you in that way. So anything unrelated would not be there, because I don't know if you guys have taken a lot of surveys in life, but when you do, it is really frustrating when there's something that's not relevant and they don't have either an NA or whatever. So you feel like you're skewing the results. So this one was just tasked with figuring out, possible survey questions that would help us understand why families or students may or may not choose Leland and Gray. Now that was when the taking Leland and Gray, off or out of the option list was one of the priorities of the group. And then this was one of the things that was bringing it back in, of saying like, well, let's find out why people might choose or choose not to go to Leland and Gray. So that is, that's kind of how I developed this one. And, I just did research on the internet of what kinds of questions private schools ask, what choice towns ask, things like that. And then I just tried to keep it as simple as possible, but it would have to be done in a way that you have your stakeholder input done in a way that isn't skewing information. So.
Thanks. I think that's a good start of a survey. So any questions on this survey, and then we can move on to the other two?
Looks like Ken has a question.
Ken has a question. Any other hands, Joe?
No, I should just paint a little blue dot on yours, though. You got to learn how to use that.
Yeah, well, it's not there. It's not coming up. It only came up during one meeting, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, okay, so for the participants of this survey, we have parents or guardians, and I assume that means of students.
Yep.
The students themselves and the alumni.
Mm-hmm.
What about all the people that chose not to send their child to
Right,
Leland
throughout the years.
throughout the years?
Right, and that was part of the discussion that came up after, and that led us onto this path of like, let's do surveys for everybody for all the last 20, 30, 40 years, and I felt like we were going kind of off track. So I just want to get clarification and a little bit more direction on exactly what questions, what is the information we're looking for and why, how recent do we want the information to be, and then then we can develop the questions much easier that way. But by like, I understand it could be an exercise to just get a lot of input from multiple stakeholders, but in this specific, my understanding was we were looking for a snapshot of present or recently. Why would somebody choose Leland and Gray or not if they were from a choice town? That's kind of what it seemed like it was aimed at.
All right, I'll wait to see the other survey. Thank you.
Well, the other surveys are still in development because there are questions about, the elementary survey, we have to talk about what it is we're actually looking for specific to elementary students. And then the community values one, we need to find out what exactly we're looking for there, because it wasn't clear. The intent of the board's, develop a survey instruction was not clear enough to actually develop that survey. And I believe it was Dana who was talking about the elementary and Keegan that was talking about the other. So, when we move on to those, Dana, you want to speak to what you were thinking about the elementary one?
Yeah, on the elementary one, I was looking for pretty much a feedback survey. Trying to find out the pros and cons of what, might be geared toward parents, or more toward parents, of what their current child's elementary schools, what's the pros, what they really like about it, and what they don't like, or where there might be areas for improvement. It was more geared toward the parents, just to get an idea, some feedback as to, are we doing a good job or are we not? Where are some problem areas that we can nip in the bud before they get too far beyond our control? Maybe just some feedback. That's all I was looking for, maybe on that.
Okay. Does that give you what you need?
Yeah, that is definitely helpful. I would just want to make sure that I feel like that would be a much shorter one. It's really like a satisfaction survey of our current parents, and probably our current homeschooled list, I would assume, that you would want to know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And what it is that they're liking, what they're not. And so there might be some open-ended questions to kind of get some general, from their words, kinds of things, but also some multiple choice answers too, right?
Yes, I don't know what those questions would be. If there was some particular area, I was just looking for some feedback. We sometimes we hear things, sometimes we don't, and I really would be, start with the grade school, work our way into the high school. Your survey on the high school and middle school is definitely. I was alumni many years ago. but I would definitely be curious what more present alumni feel about it.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Joe, could I
Yeah.
ask a clarifying question? Since
Sure.
You've got it up. Dana, that was awesome because that was super clear. And before I have asked Stephanie to go off and build that, I'd really like the board to decide if that's the path they want on, just so that we make sure that we all agree. So we don't have to do that yet, but before we go off and do that work, Joe, if we could just make sure that that's what the board's looking for. And then this one that's up on the screen right now, I think Marty brought it up at the last one, and he was really impassioned about it, and it really had an impact. That hear from the students. What do the students have to say? And I'd love to hear from Marty to see if this kind of captures what he was talking about, and then two, I'd like to follow up on what Ken said. Is this the kind of survey the board wants? We don't want to go further down the road unless this is the direction the board wants. So that was it.
Okay, gotcha. Jen, did you have a clarifying question too?
I did, thanks. I just wanted to clarify, we currently do climate surveys every year. So all of our elementary and middle and high schools send out 3 different surveys. They do one with staff, they do one with students, and they do one with community members, which includes parents. That is about, I think, kind of what you're asking about, the pros and cons about their experience, what they like, what's worked well, and its curriculum, its connection to community, it's all of those things. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe some of this isn't already out there and available right now. So just to throw it out there.
Okay, my wife might have done that and I didn't know about it.
Can we see that at the next meeting? And then maybe we don't have to recreate the wheel. Maybe we do have those answers.
I think I'll let Bill answer that, but I believe that's a question really for principals who all have that data.
I think it would be beneficial for us to try to collect it from the principals and then reflect it back to you all and then see if that's what you're looking for. And if it's not, then we can follow up with creating a survey. But if we already are collecting that data on a routine basis from the direct, yeah, exactly. So that would be a great direction from the board, just to bring that collection.
Okay, perfect. I have a whole bunch of hands. I think Lindsay, you were first, then Howie, then Ken. Congratulations on figuring the hand out.
So I was touched on just a little bit after I raised my hand, but I wanted to make sure that the high school survey includes families that choose to homeschool as it also, because we're looking at people making choices and why are they choosing that. So it's not just tuition kids.
Gotcha. Thank you. Marty, I got you in there too. Howie?
So is this a poll of voters or just guardians, students, and alumni?
The survey that you're looking at right now is just guardians, students, and alumni, current Leland and Gray,
So this is not the place to put a question that I'd like to hear from the voters on. Okay, thank you. Are we doing a poll of voters?
That's what my idea for a survey was.
Are we surveying voters?
I think that will be addressed when you get to the third survey that Keegan has suggested. If we could maybe just finish the high school survey, I think we're good on the elementary.
Okay, thank you.
Did we lose you, Joe?
Yeah, I think we did it. I'm not far from Joe, and the power blipped again, so he might be gone.
Bill, you're muted.
Bill, you're muted.
Marty, then Ken.
So I think Ken was before me. I don't want to step on his toes if he's.
Okay, Ken, then Marty.
It's okay, Marty. Go right ahead.
Marty, then
What?
Ken.
All right, I like it. I like it. I just wanted to, back what Bill said when we had this meeting a few weeks ago, we were talking about a very similar situation. That's exactly what I meant, Bill. Is we can interview parents and guardians, we can interview alum, we can get the best of the best, but the only true voice you're going to hear, the only passionate true voice you're going to hear is from the kids. That's the bottom line. If you want to hear about how kids feel and appreciate what goes on inside those walls at Leland and Gray, you need to ask them and get their opinion. And they'll tell you how special of a place it is and what goes on in there and how things are great. So that's, to me, I know I hear Howie saying they want, voters. I hear other people saying, listen, what makes a school is the kids and the people inside of it. They're going to give you your honest opinion of what's going on inside that school and how valued it is by them. And that's really, at the end of the day, what matters. So,
Marty, have you looked at the draft survey that was created and those questions?
I have not.
Okay. It is, I'll send you a link, but I mean, it's in all the board packets. It's linked on the website. It was linked in the chat earlier.
Yeah.
It'll be important. I mean, I think Stephanie did a nice job of really looking at a broad range of making sure that we ask those questions, but not just to current students. As Lindsay talked about, students that have chosen to homeschool or chose to do something different. But I think the point was to hear from the students and not have that voice be filtered.
Absolutely. I mean, the students, right. It's at school. Students drive it.
All right. Thank you, Marty. All right, Ken, that was very polite. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, actually, before I put my hand up, I saw Patty's up and then it went down and it's up again.
And so you're going to let Patty talk. Okay, you're very kind. All right, Patty.
You go ahead, Ken. I'm not a board member, so. board
That's all
goes
right. You're the
first.
public. That's who we're here for. That's who we represent.
Well, I just have
Go
a
ahead.
quick question on the possible participants. Are the parents and guardians, are they just parents and guardians of current students? Or are they parents and guardians of alumni as well? Because I think I know the students are a big part of it, but parents decide where their kids go to school in a way. So I would think some of their thoughts as to why they did or didn't choose Leland and Gray would be important. Just a thought.
No, that's great, Patty. Steph, thoughts on your design?
I think the only thing that would be difficult is when we say alumni, it's the people who did graduate or stayed at Leland and Gray. So trying to figure out like how far back would we go to trying to capture all the people who didn't choose Leland and Gray. That might be hard, but it is good input. I just don't know how we might find them.
Yeah, that's a tough. Yeah.
But
I mean, even just the individual schools that you could, and you don't have to go that far back really, because I think a lot of the things that are going on are more recent, the since we started losing students, which has been a while, but not a really long time. So, but it was just a question and a thought.
Yeah,
but
no,
thank you.
Definitely a good one. I like that perspective too. And I just don't know. I will have to think about how we find them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I think you're up, Ken.
Okay. See how patiently I can wait? Anyway, this survey here, it seems to me, that we're looking at, and while I do value the kids' opinion, is what this whole survey is looking at is does the board's values line up with what the students are saying and what the parents are saying? It seems to be the whole gist of this survey. The bottom line is we need a survey to find out what kind of budget, what kind of school system with the ongoing changes, whether it's going to be one building, a new building, and a refabbed old building, whatever. what is their tolerance to approve the budget? That's the key. Without a budget, you have nothing. We need to find out where the people are that are going to be paying for it.
I think your question will be answered in what Keegan's going
Number
to talk
3.
about. Yeah.
Okay.
I
All
think,
right.
I think Marty's point, and I think what we heard from the budget committee and what we heard from the board on the 11th was simply, let's make sure that we hear the student voice. Let's do the best we can to capture students that chose to go to Leland Gray and then, participated in homeschool or did something different if we can to the best of our ability. But make sure that we hear directly from the students. And I think your point, Ken, is incredibly important. And I think it goes to what both Howie and Keegan are looking for. But I'll let Keegan speak for herself. But let me just see if anybody else wants to talk about, is it worthwhile for us? This is what I want. Is it worthwhile for us to take the raw of what Stephanie created, put it into a nice little Google form, show it back to you, and get the okay before we ever put it out? So I'm not gonna, can everybody just, I'm gonna have to call on you, okay? Just say, yay, make a mock draft Google form, or nay. That's it, okay? You ready? Here we go. Howie.
Yay.
Lindsay.
Yay.
Dana.
Yay.
Trish.
Yay.
Kenny.
Yay.
Keegan.
Yay.
Mike. Did we lose Mike and Townsend too? All right, I got enough of you. Stephanie, we're gonna make a draft one in Google, okay? And we'll go through another round of editing.
Okay, and just so that I know, we're trying to capture the information on why people do or do not choose Leland and Gray and what's important to them in their experiences at Leland and Gray, correct?
I think that we're getting a clap from Marty. That feels good to me.
Okay.
All right, Keegan.
That's
give
more
us
than a
your-
clap.
Give us your pitch.
Can I?
What are you looking for?
Me or Marty?
No, we've heard enough from Marty. We're good. No, Keegan. So really important for us is what is the purpose of the survey and what information are you looking to gather to inform the board?
All right. So in speaking to what Ken had mentioned about wanting to know, at the end of the day, what values are going to carry a budget forward through voters. So I think that this is all part of that broader conversation around like, what is the future of the school and the direction of education within our school district? And what I've been hearing at a lot of our meetings that we've been having, there seems to be 3 essential issues that people have things that they want. We want low tax rates. We want local schools open, and we want high quality 21st century education. And in my experience, you don't get all 3. If you want low taxes, you compromise a lot of your educational opportunities. If you want local schools open, you typically have to pay a lot more to continue to fund an unsustainable education model. So what I would think, I know what I would prefer, and I'm on Team Marty here. Schools are designed for children. Kids are why we are here. And in my experience, if you do what's right for kids, you're never going to be wrong. If you aim to please voters first, or if you aim to please a community from a financial standpoint first, you're oftentimes compromising either the integrity of your educational system or on the opportunities that you can offer your kids. So what I would like to see, or what I would like to hear, is those value statements. What's most important to these communities? Is it the tax rate? Is that the bent branch? Like, absolutely not. No more 2.48 is not acceptable, you know, whatever that number would be. And just kind of having like that priority list. I'm hearing like having kids on a bus for an extra 15 to 35 or 40 minutes takes away from time that kids could be learning. That is true. However, if you are sending all of your local kids, 5 of them, to a local school, then you need to come up with the funds to maintain a model like that. And if you want the high quality, top shelf, latest and greatest fiber optic cable, Wi-Fi in every classroom, one-to-one computer initiatives with whatever bells and whistles are amazing, that's not going to be free. So what I would like to see and what I would like to hear is, rather than guess about what our community wants and make assumptions based on my opinions and values around education, where I think we should be going to provide for the kids, I would be curious to know, like, what are the values? Are we so I don't even know what the expression is, but are we so focused on the sensitivity related to passing a budget and holding those purse strings and demanding that the tax rates stay low? Or are we willing to, like, is it more important to provide serious opportunities for our kids? And I know that that's probably like a real foolish person or foolish question to ask, but I think that that's the crux of it. What do we value the most? If we really only care about spending the least amount of money, like least amount of money for the most bang for your buck, then the high quality education piece and that local community center, I think, goes by the wayside. I don't think we should be making decisions around financials alone. So I'd be curious what are those sticking points? The
So
long
if I hear you correctly, the purpose of a survey would be to find out in rank order
yes.
a community's priorities
Mm-hmm.
and force the choice of, this is the first priority, this is the second priority, this is the third priority, this is the fourth priority, so that the board would have that information to be able to assist them in making choices about the future for the school system.
So eloquent and succinct. Yes, that is exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay, Jen, as the person who will correct me when I'm wrong, what did I not clarify there?
I think that's good when you're, it's a good overall. We'll have to think a little bit about what that looks like. I think you don't want to set up your community members to have a dichotomy. Like, they're going to want to have some open response, and if you do a forced choice rank of saying low taxes or high quality education versus, keeping schools open, they're not going to like that. They're going to want to be able to expound on what you're asking. So we'll have to give me a little while to wrap my head around about how that will look in a survey form.
Thanks, Jen.
But
Yeah,
for that opening, we're pretty close.
we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, I have more
Howie,
understanding of the
then,
purpose.
okay, Howie, then Lindsay.
All right, I have one question for the taxpayers, and it's an either or. If you could only have one, which would you prefer? Local elementary schools, a local elementary school in each town as we have now, or a high school? And I would, given that in my opinion, this district can't afford both. So I would like to know which the taxpayers would prefer. And I think that would really inform our decisions moving forward.
So to clarify, on the survey that is being suggested of reaching out to the community, you would like to have one specific question to be included in that survey. And that one specific question is an either or. It's a forced choice.
If you had to choose between one of the,
for each town or a high school.
yes, I want to know what the community really wants to know, wants out of that.
All right,
Thank you.
that I understand. Jen,
Hey, I'm back.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I have that. I'm writing that down. I think the board might want to consider some other things if they want to have people have that kind of this or that. Just having that one option on there may make people think that you already have a decision in mind and that they don't have other options. So just a little.
To be fair, I would say, I don't think Howie said that's the only question. He just wanted to
Understood.
make sure that was one of the questions.
Understood. So I guess I'm saying this to open it up if there are other questions like that, that we design it around those kind of choices.
All right, Lindsay, in a second, let me just catch up Joe and Al. So Joe, you're going to take over again. We are discussing the Keegan proposed community survey, and Keegan kind of gave a nice overview, and Howie gave us the one question he would like to be considered, and Lindsay has been waiting patiently to weigh in. And I'm going to pass it off to you, my man.
Okay.
My turn.
Yes.
So I just was, as we're talking about these options, we have a list of options that we're considering more strongly. And it seems to me like putting those options out there in some form or another, whether it's specifically which of these feels nice to you, or if you can put it into words that are more general, where you're not giving them, here's the 6 options that we're considering, but you know, if there was some breakdown that was specific to those things that we are more strongly considering, then I feel like the data that we get back is going to be a lot more immediately useful. And I just worry a little bit about exactly what information we're getting back on this survey and how immediately applicable it can be. I feel like we could go down a big wormhole with this, I guess, is where I'm at. I'm very interested to see all of the questions, I guess, because I think we could open a gigantic can of worms.
Agreed. We could, but if we have a draft, you know, for the next, if we have a draft for the next meeting, I'm sorry, Al and I are in the same place and it's an echo like crazy. He's sliding his chair down the hall to get farther away. We could probably have a draft for the next meeting. Is that reasonable? I'm looking for thumbs up, Bill. You're muted.
Jen is the person you are looking for to give confirmation on whether this can all be tied into even a draft to look at.
Can we have a draft, Jen? Can I work with you to get one or help you?
Yes, I can come up. Is that June 22nd? Is that our next?
That would be a dream. Yeah, June 22nd would be great.
I'd even take the first July meeting.
How about I can put something together for the June 22nd meeting that will give you more direction to maybe tease out, once you start looking at questions, what it might look like and focus a little bit more.
That is above and beyond. Thank you.
Well, and I just want to point out, Jen will be on vacation, so I'll get to deliver and be a part of that conversation. So that works.
Okay. Ken, your hand was up. Now it's down. Which is it?
It's up. Okay. So I think Howie hit the nail right on the head, because by asking that question in the survey is going to give the board and the administration the narrowing of what options should be further delved into for the future. That's all I have to say.
What was the question again?
Yeah, Howie, why don't you share that with Joe and Al?
Oh, the question is, either if you have to choose between one or the other, which do you prefer? Local, keeping town elementary schools going and not offering high schools, or centralizing the elementary schools and running the district as a K-12 district?
Okay. Got it.
Thank you, Howie.
You're welcome.
I think Al wants to ask a question.
Oh, God. Sorry, I'm trying to not to do feedback here. Okay, good. Phew. So my question would be, who is this going out to? I mean, I thought we kind of heard loud and clear from folks that for sure we didn't want to take Leland and Gray off the table. I'm not sure where this is coming from. I think probably if we ask the question, then we'll hear a resounding yes, we want to keep Leland and Gray in some form or fashion. Not worried, so I'm not worried about that. But we just keep on kind of bringing this back up again and again, and I feel like we're just not making the kind of progress that we need to. Let's just put a stake in the ground on certain things and then move forward, and then the administration has limited resources and limited amounts of time. So I just feel as though we're just, pedaling and not getting anywhere unless we can just say, all right, there are certain things that we want to move forward with. This is one of them. Leland and Gray is going to stay in existence, and let's work from there and map out the rest of it. That's my thoughts.
I agree with you, Al.
Go ahead, Howie.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Al, I disagree. We haven't heard from the taxpayers on this. We haven't even passed our budget yet. I haven't seen anything coming up from anywhere that's any kind of reasonable plan for bringing down tax rates, and taxpayers are pretty, fed up. So we need real direction. I just don't see how what we're doing is sustainable, and I don't see any plan for something sustainable into the future. I mean, the taxpayers are just not going to support ever increasing taxes. And town schools are written into the Vermont Constitution. So if we are going to take actions to consolidate our elementary schools and leave towns without an elementary school, I really want to hear loud and clear from the taxpayers that that's the direction they want to move in.
Okay, Patty, I believe you were next, and then we go back to the board.
It wasn't that many years ago when there were quite a few people in Jamaica who wanted to leave the union and do school choice. It was a bit of a battle. It passed actually at one point, and then on a second, it didn't narrowly. So I don't know how many people know about this, and I really don't think that taking that off the table. I've always been a strong supporter of Leland and Gray, but the building has issues. I just think that you have to leave at least one of those options on the table, because, I just think it's important. It's one of the options. Thank you.
Lindsay?
I hear the Howie's concern about taxpayers needing to buy into what we're doing. Obviously, that's the case. My concern is that when you start making everything black and white and throwing it out there to people like, hey, so your choice is either this or it's that, that two things are going to happen. One is that the community is going to think that we already have made up our mind about exactly what's happening, which we haven't. And then secondly, I think that people are going to lose sight of what's really important here and what we're actually really here trying to decide, and that's how best to educate kids. And yes, we clearly need taxpayers to buy into that, and we clearly need to make decisions that they're going to feel comfortable with. but I feel like our direction of thought needs to be, what are we doing that's best for kids? And that may be choicing them out. If we can't run a school that is going to get taxpayer buy-in, that people want to attend, that is worthy of being attended, then we shouldn't run it. We should close it and let people go where where they're going to get educated. Because what matters is educating kids and doing what's best for the kids. It doesn't, I think all of the other things are important, but I think we just need to remember what our values are as a board and not lose sight of the big picture of things. And I think it's when you start putting things out there that are black and white like that, you're gonna probably scare a lot of people either into thinking what one way or the other. And I think there's a lot of gray area that we need to really just consider.
Thanks, Lindsay. Ken, you were next, then Keegan.
Okay, this is just one question on a survey. Everybody's got to remember that. It's not black and white, it's a hypothetical. It's to get a feel of what the taxpayers want, which is more precious to them. Is it a local elementary school or a local high school? That's what the question is asking. That question will drive the board and the administration to focus on which options we want to further pursue and not waste manpower on doing 11 options when 3 of them the public wants nothing to do with. This is like, it's only one question in a survey. I don't think it, these are the people who are paying for the education. If they say, we prefer Leland Gray to having a local elementary school, then those are the tasks and the options that we keep on the table. If they say the opposite, then we need to look at the other ones. It's that simple. It's not saying it's not a good school. It's not saying our elementary schools aren't good schools. It's saying, which do you prefer?
Okay, I think we got it. Al, you were next, and then Jen.
I think it was Keegan next, actually. I
Oh,
can
I'm
see
sorry,
her, but-
Keegan. Your hand went down and I skipped you. Yeah, Al, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
It's getting late. I'm management skills,
So I think like the crux of what I would like to hear from voters is to elucidate what is it that people want. And I think that having that hard conversation and having to make that black and white choice, voting is not convoluted. Voting is yes or no when it comes to budgets passing. So I think if we have a better understanding of what are the voters willing to pay, and with what they're willing to pay, it's our opportunity to discover what is it that we can offer in terms of structure, in terms of building, in terms of transportation, in terms of all of that. But I think, like to a degree, I agree with Ken. You got to have a clear understanding of what not just of your tax base, of what your voters are willing to say yes to. And we know that a 19% increase didn't get a yes. And it had to go back and the budget was redesigned and reshuffled, and we kept programming open, but we made all these other constraints. And we have a building that's, outlived its time, and Band-Aids don't quite work anymore. So a hard conversation needs to happen. the hope I have behind this survey is to just find out, okay, get down to the serious business. What is a community willing to pay for, and how much are they willing to spend? And to determine, do they want the high quality, latest and greatest, amazing opportunities that will bring in more people? Then that's going to cost a lot. If our communities are saying absolutely not, do not raise my taxes anymore, I can't handle it, I don't even have kids that go into the school district here, or whatever the sentiment may be, well, then that's going to also inform how we can be creative with our conversations. But I think forcing people to start the conversation and be black and white in what their values are, I think is important. And the intent behind my request to have a survey like this was just to cut through all of the, what about this situation, what about that situation, just come right down to, what are you willing to spend? Because that's ultimately that's the sad business side of education that completely ignores really what's good for kids. It's what are the adults willing to fund. So
Thanks, Keegan. Now it's Al.
So I think it's a slippery slope to kind of hinge our response based on one survey question. I mean, interesting data, and I'm sure it would show that people are very interested in keeping Leland and Gray open. But when we start talking about saying, all right, exactly how much money are you willing to spend? There are so many things that we can't even consider at this point. We've got pupil waiting study that we might get tax relief for. The government might actually come back with some construction cost monies. You know, in the past, we've had 50-50 for construction costs. So I think there's so much that we don't know at this point. And if we try to box people into a particular number to say something like, are you willing to spend $2.15? Is that your unified tax rate? Yes or no, above or below? It's just all kind of very arbitrary. I mean, the one thing that I keep on hearing over and over again is that people do want to have Leland and Gray, or at least a centralized school in this area that people can go to. The other huge consideration is that a lot of people are watching this, not just taxpayers, but you've got administration, you've got teachers who are all looking, trying to figure out what is going on here. Is Leland and Gray going to be in existence? Yes, no. I think we need to show everybody some kind of leadership and let them know that Leland and Gray will be in existence. If we want to have the best quality teachers, the best quality administration, show some level of continuity. Sourcing it out gives us lack of choice. I mean, there's all kinds of negative things that I think would happen if we farm people out here, there, and yeah, I think there's a huge list of negatives to that. So we really need to, as leaders, provide that guidance and support to the people that are working so hard for us at this time. That's what I got to say about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Al. Jen, you had your hand up forever and you took it down. Do you still want it?
I'm fine. I'll weigh in when needed. Thank you.
Howie, then Dana.
I don't think we need a survey of taxpayers to know that the taxes are skyrocketing and people do not want their taxes to keep going up. So I just, you could ask that question. I mean, I made my question an either or. Do you want, town elementary schools or a high school? There could be a third option, or do you want your taxes to just continue to go up? But honestly, I didn't feel like it needed that third option, because who wants their taxes to continue to go up? So given that we don't have a plan to make these taxes stop going up, I think, again, Al, I appreciate that we want to have confidence that Leland and Gray is going to stay open in the future. And to do that, we need to know that the community is behind it. And that's why I want this question answered. Because if the answer is, yeah, if you're right, if the answer is overwhelmingly yes, people would much rather have a local high school than town elementary schools. Awesome, man. Let's jump on it and do it, you know? And if that's not what people want, with that, we need to take that into consideration. So to say that it's leadership to not even ask the question, to me, that's not leadership. That's hiding from what the taxpayers are just going to tell us when the budget time comes and they don't vote the budget in. So I really hope that we do have this question out for the public to answer, to guide our decisions moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Dana, your hand was up next. And the
Yeah,
power
I
is
was-
back on in Townsend.
I was just gonna say the taxpayers, when they, we'll find out with this present vote coming up Wednesday where we sit, and I guarantee it, Jamaica's been a gold town. When you remember the term gold town, we've been paying that gold town tax for quite a while now. I know we're waiting on the weighing, but as legislature goes, we're waiting and we're paying. When it comes time to vote, those budgets, whatever we decide in whichever direction we go, the taxpayer is going to tell us. I know we're doing it all for the kids. I love doing this for the kids, but ultimately, if the taxpayers can't pay their taxes, they leave and they take their kids with them, and then our school goes away. It's kind of an end round thing here. We need to find a compromise to do it for the kids, but also be mindful of the taxpayers. Things are going to get tough here in the next couple of years. If the state education fund ain't there, they're not going to be passing these budgets. So we need to find a happy medium. We need to find out as much feedback from these people. I don't want to lose Leland Gray. I don't want to send my kids an hour away for schooling. But, we have to be mindful of what the taxpayers are going to be willing to pay. And that's all I got to say.
Lindsay.
So I just want to reiterate that we have a handful of options. The reason we're going through these options is because we understand that the tax situation we are in is bad. We understand that we can't keep gouging over and over. That's why we're having these conversations. We have already done the work to provide a handful of options that we think are more likely to be better choices. I think if we can guide, if we're looking to get feedback, that's the feedback that we need is feedback about the things that we're considering, because we've already done the work. We've already had a considerable amount of feedback, actually, as far as board meetings goes. And it's not that we haven't just pulled this out of nowhere. And I think that we will get feedback on these choices that we've already brought up. And I think it's going to be guided. I mean, all of the questions that everyone's asking about, is it better to have an elementary school or a high school or whatever it is, all of that's going to get teased out in the discussion about these choices that we've already started the work on it. I just don't want to, I feel like we're a little bit going backwards now.
Thanks, Lynn. Ken?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to quote Lori Garland here. When it comes time for the budget, when you vote, you can't vote yes on one part and no on the other part. And the reason she said that is because it's happened on our split budget. But it's one budget, but we have to split it because of law, right? So obviously, some of our taxpayers, I don't know the exact amount, I didn't count the votes, But some of our taxpayers are saying, hey, the cost of the elementary school is too high, or the cost of the high school is too high. So they already have a formed opinion on how their tax dollars are hurting. If you don't want to do this and do a survey, let's go by last year's vote. Okay? If you want to say, okay, we don't need to look at this, look at last year's vote and see how many people split their vote and which way it went. And then you'll have an answer. It'll be a minuscule answer because it wasn't a large majority, but it was enough of a majority to have another budget vote. So think about it. These questions need to be asked.
Okay, so we've hashed out what we need on this survey now. We have the one question and we'll develop some more questions and we'll have a draft. Jen has agreed by the 22nd. And then we can edit those down and go from there. And now Jen has her hand up. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, would it make sense for me to create some questions that ask about the options as well? Like we can do some things in there that like, is this something you would support, or yes or no, or feedback on each of those?
I think so. Rather than, I mean, it can't be a one question survey. I think we can ask, about all of our, about whether some options are more favored than others. I don't know if we necessarily have to go through all of them, but we can sort of ask enough questions to get a feel about where our public is.
Is the board comfortable with me kind of lumping some of those options together? I don't want to take any of them off the table. I understand that's not something you've agreed to, but maybe look at it from a tax rate rather than maybe an instruction view. Meaning I might combine a couple of choices into one that would talk about configurations could mean A, B, or C. This would be the impact financially based on what Lori's already put together. Or no?
That makes sense to me, but
Jen, I think that makes sense to me as well, because we currently have like a list of 11 different choices, and we know in pretty good detail about what each of those options would be. Joe Public is probably less likely to tease out the differences between all of them. So whatever I would suggest, having you take the lead and combine, the common types of configurations and say like, this would be one type, this would be another, and so forth. But I don't think you have to go into like the same depth and detail for those surveys that you would for this conversation. If that's what you were asking.
That is what I was asking. Thank you.
okay.
I just have one more thing. I'm sorry. I have no idea how to raise my hand on this thing, so I'm sorry. I have looked all over, I promise. I'll write a one-page document about how to do it, I guess. I just have some concerns with, like, if something is not a viable option, or if it's, there's so many uncertainties. Like, even if you think about special education, if we did close a building to typical general education instruction and we open it up for a regional, there's just so many factors that could impact that. I just want to make sure that this board is not boxing itself into something that is going to impact the morale all over everything. If you guys feel like something is definitely not an option, I would encourage you not to put it out there. Just my 2 cents as a taxpayer in my town. I feel the perspective of thinking that I have these choices and then being upset if I actually don't is kind of concerning. So just want to put that out there.
Thanks. Good insight. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
Joe, I do. This is Johanna. I'm on Ian's computer, and I, like Stephanie, cannot figure out for the life of me how to raise my hand. So I'm just going to jump in here. I am wondering, one thing is there a time frame for when this survey is supposed to be going out? I'm curious about what that deadline or timeline looks like, and the amount of information that we can share with the taxpayers between now and then, I think would be very important. I'm a parent in our district and a taxpayer, and I would hope that people who are going to be asked to fill out a survey or make some sort of choices about something, that they thoroughly understand what it is they're choosing. And I think if they're just reading some options on a piece of paper, there may be a lot of information that's missing. I know that these meetings are recorded, and we can post them and share them and do the best we can to share the communication that happens in the board meetings. So I'm just wondering if we know exactly what the timeline is for the survey, we could work harder to get out the information about what people are actually selecting.
I don't know what the timeline for the survey would be. I would guess if we're going to have drafts by late June, we would probably get the survey out sometime in July and give them a month or so to respond. I agree. It's hard to answer those questions with no background and no history, and there's quite a bit of it to get. So yeah, education, there could be an education piece as part of that survey. And I think, it might even be a good idea to, when the surveys go out, send links to send the surveys with links to the meetings or something, like more information can be found here, kind of thing, because it would be tough to answer those questions without any background. Ken, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, I just want to point out, instead of listing options, do you remember our first meeting with the public, and we had options A and B with Bill and Stephanie and everybody?
A, B,
And
and C. Yo, I remember that meeting well.
oh, you remember that meeting well? Okay. And so do we really want to label things options, or do we want to send out a fish finder and see where we're headed, or where the public wants us to head? This is what I'm saying. If we add in options, it's going to be, wait a minute, what? I don't like that one, or I like that one. That's why we should, I don't know if we should even put the options in a survey. I think we should just ask general questions. So first we have the public's general guidance on where the district should be going. Then we narrow it down from there.
I would say at this point, we take whatever we get as a draft and work it from there till it's something we like to send. Bob.
I'm not sure how you guys view this, but I feel like to some degree you guys already did that when you created your values, didn't you? I'm just wondering how the values that you guys created in your retreat impacts the decisions that you're making right now and how you're proceeding right now. And just something to consider. If you've already established values and you're talking about things that are outside of those values, you should probably sort that out before you go to the public with any sort of inquiry, I would think. And then the only thing I just want to add is, listening to a lot of this, you guys are in a really tough situation. I get that. And I think those of us that work in the school district certainly appreciate what you guys are doing and the difficulty of the decisions you're facing. I guess I would like to echo a little bit of what Marty said earlier about the kids, and I think Keegan sort of had mentioned this at one point as well. If we're basing all of our decisions based on tax rates, I don't think you're doing what's in the best interest of kids. That being said, I think you can run a fiscally responsible school district and still do right by kids. But the programming of the kids has to come first, and not the budget factors. I just think that's something that I've been on a board before. I've been a teacher, certainly a parent, obviously now a principal. So I've seen a lot of different sides of this, and I think that if a board really wants to put kids first, and they have values that are driven by that, then that has to be what you guys consider as part of how you build the survey and the information that you collect. But again, my original point was to kind of step back and think, do you already know this information? Do you already have it? Do you already have it documented and written down somewhere around what your values are? And that might help guide how you pick which options to dive deeper on, versus just kind of spinning a little bit, which seems like maybe we're doing.
Thanks, Bob. Okay. Anything else to add to that, folks? That's you've given us a lot to think about, Bob. I think, we may have some of that information. We worked very hard on those values, and maybe what our values are going to point us to is something that's uncomfortable enough that we want some exterior validation. I don't know. Al, your hand's up.
I was just going to agree with what Bob said, and yeah, I definitely think we need to reflect on our values and certainly put students first. It's never, and I forget who alluded to it before, it is a tricky balancing act between taxpayers and the kids and the parents and everybody. But at the end of the day, we all have to know and understand that this is about the kids. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Al. Ken.
Yeah, like Bob said, these are the board's values. Okay, the board came up with these values. The board put them on paper. Okay, these are our values. Okay, the values of the representatives of the public. Okay, we represent them. We are their elected official to represent them. But our values that we have up there, we do have tax-friendly, budget. I value a tax-friendly budget, but it doesn't rank over what the kids need for their education. So our goals and our values aren't listed. This is the number one value. This is the number two value. So we do have the values, but different board members rank them differently. And all we're asking for is to find out from the public. So let's just do it and move on, because it's getting late. Get a draft and let's see if we like it.
If nobody has anything else to add to that, Bill, are you clear on what needs to happen before the next meeting?
Well, I appreciate the motion and the agreement for you to do a press release. I think that's an excellent idea because it engages more and more of the public. I'll be very fascinated to see what you end up writing up about this meeting. Lori and I will work on options 4 through 9, bringing them forward to FY22. They'll be ready by July 13th. We are going to take a look at the climate surveys that currently exist and see if they are getting the kind of information that Dana was alluding to about at the elementary, basically some feedback. And then if that is satisfactory, then we'll have that data for the board to look at. And if not, then we'll look at going a step further and creating a survey. Stephanie is going to take the existing high school student survey and put it into a Google form so that we can look at what it would look like if we asked that survey to be given out. And then we get to the all-encompassing 90-minute discussion about the final survey. And I'm comfortable talking with Jen and seeing if there's maybe some draft that we could come forward to you on. No, it's not super clear. And no, everybody has some different opinions, and we totally appreciate that. But I think we can take a stab so that we have something concrete that can be discussed on the 22nd at the budget committee meeting. So I think we can do that. You know, I would just want to echo all of your comments that this is an unbelievably difficult thing. And there is going to be no perfect answer. And you guys are going to have to lead from your collective values and your community values and why you were elected to the board. And you're going to have to come to some consensus about moving forward. Because the reason we're doing this is so that you don't end up in January having not done this. And then you're making decisions that are not in context and they're not in the best interest of the community or the students. So I appreciate how challenging this is, but I do applaud you for going through this challenging process. But I think we do have what we can start working on for the budget committee meeting on the 22nd.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anybody have anything else to add? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and I'll see you all tomorrow night at our annual meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll make that motion.
All right, it's one last roll call. Lindsay.
Aye.
Dana.
Aye.
Trish.
Aye.
Howie.
Aye.
Keegan.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
Howie.
Aye.
And that's it for board members. Thank you, everyone. And again, I'll see you tomorrow night at the end.